to She Wasn't Born Yesterday for women who are 40 plus fabulous by the Empty Nest Chicks. I'm Janet Evans, ex-M&T Saatchi advertising creative, who have won numerous radio and TV awards. Not that that'll affect us because we're doing a podcast.
And I'm Dr. Amelia Haynes, who has been a medical doctor for 30 years and specialising in sexual health and mental health and relationships, and I'm generally a very useful human being.
Well, we'll find out about that, but we are here to work together.
People tell me on good authority that I am.
Really? Yes, well, they never say that to me, so I think we're the perfect hosts for She Wasn't Born Yesterday. Dr. Amelia, I have a question for you.
Yes,
Who is that guy in your bed?
My husband will be so glad to discuss that.
But how do you know he's your husband and not really a woman? Does he look good in your fishnet stockings? Does he like to wear your...
scraped off some DNA and did a test years ago.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
You're a doctor, you can do that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But for some people, they do find that their partner actually changes and over time, and we all change over time, but if you actually change your gender, I think that can be, quite disturbing.
Well, the whole scenario is a very disturbing one. Or, just the whole idea of how changing genders, certainly, but also kind of changing your behaviour and deciding that you do have same-sex attraction, going with something like that.
Yes. And so to clarify a bit of all of this stuff, our next episode is, it's called Who's This Guy in My Bed? And what better person to discuss this with us than Dr. Pat Weerakoon.
She is an absolute expert on this. Yeah.
Sexpert galore. And she's a sexologist, she's an author, she's a speaker, she's an international woman of mystery. She's everything we want for this episode. Who is this guy in my bed? And here she is to chat to us right now.
Great to be with you again, ladies.
Hello, gorgeous. Hello. We're loving chatting to you. And today we have a fascinating topic. And this was your title for this episode. It's Who's This Guy in My Bed? I love this. This is so amazing. And so here's a scenario for us. You marry a guy, you settle down, you have some kids, maybe the kids grow up, leave home, and wham! One day you wake up and you discover the guy that you thought you'd married is actually gay or pansexual or transgender, or maybe you are. How common is it to be married to someone that you think you know?
I'd like to also ask, how sudden is it? Like, that's an interesting way of expressing it, Janet. How sudden would it be, do you think?
I just love the way you said it. You get up in the morning and you find a pansexual next to you. It's almost like you get up in the morning and you find a turkey next to you or something. Look, the reality is, I think we need to take a step back here, ladies, and think that, look, we all change.
Yes.
With time, right? We do change. And the thing is, when you say, who's this man in my bed, it could be something just so simple as, you've just grown apart and you suddenly realize the kids have left home and, this man, this hairy man, this bad breath isn't what I expected 25, 30 years into marriage. It could be something like that when you say, who's this man in my bed? But I guess we're looking at what if your sexual
orientation
feelings in terms of who you are, your orientations, your attractions, or even your very sense of feeling of who you are have changed. Now, there was a time when we were like the more traditional cultures when these things were not even considered as possible. But we live in this individualistic culture of self-gratification.
Yeah.
That's what's driving us. I have to find myself. And of course, take time till the kids leave home. And, now it's time to find myself. And so we are finding women, and Amelia, I don't know whether you come across this, but I have, where they've been married, then they'd say, you know what, I'm actually a lesbian.
Yes.
And one of the concerns there is that women are more fluid in their sexual orientation. And therefore, It could actually be looking at, I'm bored with my husband, and here's my best friend.
Yes.
And now I begin to think I'm sexually turned on by my best friend. So the woman could feel that she's lesbian. Or the man could, think, oh, look, this is boring. Let me, I've actually had same-sex attraction for a long time. And so that's sex attraction, orientation. And yeah, we do see it. It's not common, but as counselors, as therapists,
yes.
I'm sure Amelia too, we've seen this. The whole transgender phenomenon is relatively new. Oh, they've always been around.
Exactly. They have always been around, but yeah.
I was practicing in 1980. I was helping my professor run a transsexual clinic in Hawaii, but that's another story. But we are seeing men think Caitlyn Jenner phenomenon.
Yes, yeah.
Who actually been married, had kids, and then say, I'm coming out as a woman. And this is, called a condition called autogynephilia, where men from about their teenage are actually turned on by the feeling, the fantasy of themselves as a woman. So a man who gets turned on by fantasizing he is a woman.
Wow.
Now, in 1980, we called that a fetish. And we would see cross-dressers and we would call it a fetish. But today, with this sort of self-gratification, I've got to find my authentic self. We find these men now coming out as adults and saying, I want to change. So this is the kind of person you might find your husband, your partner turning into. Rare, but we are seeing it.
Yeah, I was going to say, it does seem to be it is uncommon. It's still uncommon, but it does seem to be a current, trend. I kind of don't want to call it trend because it sounds horrible, but it's like a trend. And so, there are more people saying it at the moment than they ever have. And the same thing with women doing the same thing. Lots of women who are lesbians have actually settled down, even married another woman at the moment, and then gone, oh my goodness, it's like I'm being forced into being heterosexual because my lovely, lovely lesbian partner has decided that actually she's a man. And
wow,
you know what I mean? It's kind of doing it's causing everyone to have to do kind of emotional somersaults.
Wow.
Emotional somersaults.
That's complicated.
There's even a whole category of trans widows.
Yeah.
Women whose husbands who have come out as trans as women.
Yeah.
And so you're a trans widow, like Amelia was saying, because what are you now, a lesbian? And what we forget in this whole conversation is the children and the extended family.
Yeah, there's so many people involved. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Here we go again.
Does it necessarily, do you think, mean that the whole marriage is doomed? Like, if it's a massive shock to your system, like you had no idea that your husband was same-sex attracted, something like that. What do you do? How do you deal with that?
Well, it's kind of huge, isn't it, Patricia? And I find it really hard to believe. I understand it probably does happen very occasionally, but that you wouldn't have known that this is a bit of an issue for the man that you're with in that kind of scenario. I think, to kind of talk about it as being overnight and, all of a sudden must be unbelievably rare. Yeah.
So what would be signs, do you think, for example?
Well, we do have couples who are mixed orientation marriages doing really well.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know whether you have actually counseled any, Amelia, but in the time, I have talked to some and, they're really doing well. But the guy would say that, I'm just saying guy because talking of the man being gay, having gay feelings, same-sex attraction feelings, he would say that it is something he needs to always carefully set boundaries around.
Okay.
Because the temptations, the feelings can be innate and be there. But again, it's possible, and there are good marriages where one person continues to have those feelings but is able to live with them. we worship a good God.
One of the whole things about kind of anything like a long-term relationship or marriage is it's not easy. Like, it's just not easy for anyone. So this is one of the ways it can be difficult.
And you were saying earlier that you think people can actually change and sort of evolve, and maybe you discover that you have this same-sex attraction as you progress. You might not have it at the beginning, perhaps, or do you think it's always there latent, or what do you think?
Well, women, the research tells us that women are more fluid.
Yeah.
And therefore, they can get those affections, because I think partly it is that women are capable of forming really, really close same-sex friendships.
Exactly.
And it's easy to go from friendship when you're disappointed with a spouse into a lesbian relationship. I think it can happen, not easy, but it can happen easier for women than for men.
Exactly, because we like the relationships. The actual relationship is so important to women.
And, we like holding, cuddling, we just take that as natural. Hugging a friend is part of it. But for men, in general, the research says that same-sex attraction is more fixed and not as fluid. So they probably always had that innate feelings, but they just kept it subdued. And then at some point in life, they're like, I want to live this.
Coming out, baby.
Yeah.
My hairdresser did it the other way around. I mean, he was so gay. I mean, he was in this sort of iconic gay Sydney relationship, and they had the most gorgeous, stunning house, and that dog and everything. And then his partner died of AIDS, which was very sad and tragic. But then he got married, to everyone's shock, and had kids. And so it's like, what's going on there? Was he actually never gay, or what do you think, Dr. Pat?
It's not impossible. I mean, human beings are very variable in our feelings. And who knows? I mean, we can't say if you talk to one couple, really, you've talked to one couple.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right.
And I would like to be a little bug on the wall in his bedroom and find out just exactly what the scenario is.
I don't think you'd want to be in his bedroom.
Well, I think I might.
Yeah, just last week we had in a church I know, like a 75-year-old woman who'd never been married, getting married to a 82-year-old man.
Wow.
And we were talking about libido and sex and, why do people get married? What are the reasons? There's so much we can talk about. So
Yeah.
It's a huge area. It is such a massive area.
Yeah. I also know of a couple who got married, but she knew that he was gay. And so, I don't know, it just always seems so strange to me. Like, they had kids, they seemed like a happy family and all of that, but now the kids are growing up, they've gone their separate ways. I just found that incredibly
And do you know,
sad.
I was going to say, Patricia, I'm sure you see the same sort of things. They probably were as happy as most of us in the marriage. Yeah. Like, absolutely, they were getting satisfactions through the whole marital kind of situation as much as most of us.
Yeah. But, like, if you're gay and you are same-sex attracted, like, so, I'm a lesbian, say.
Yeah.
Am I going to find my husband attractive and be able to have sex with him if I'm actually not if I'm more attracted to women?
I just think that human beings are kind of fabulously amazing, that we care more about the human being, especially women. We care more about the human, actually, and men. I don't want to be mean to men.
Because Derek's here.
Yeah. Well, no, not just because of that, just because. Actually, men are great. And I know that Dr. Patricia totally agrees with me. Yeah, I just think that human beings like who we like, and that's very, very important to us. And the sexual kind of drive doesn't necessarily rule our lives.
Only with some people.
Only with some people. It's true.
Yeah, because it's contextual.
Yeah.
It's contextual. Look, most gay men are just absolutely wonderful communicators, and they actually understand intimacy well. And so, marriage is so many facets.
Yeah.
And women who are married to men, and again, one word you used, Janet, was mostly gay or mainly gay. So, again,
Yeah.
there are times when a mostly gay man could be sexually attracted to the woman. And so it's variable. Men and women, we are wonderful human beings. God created us that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, if this does happen to you, do you think that you would need to get counselling necessarily? Like if it's a shock to your system?
I just think we'd all probably do well with a little bit of counselling. Actually, to be perfectly so, it's not as clear cut as that perhaps. I don't know. What do you think, Patricia?
Whether you call it counseling or whether you just call it talking to someone,
Yeah.
I think in many ways churches are meant to provide that, a place where people can just share and talk about some of these deep and intimate issues. And often we as a church family are failing in not providing that.
I think maybe we're too judgy. Like, human beings by character are a little bit judgy of one another, which is hilarious. Haven't we turned the camera on our own kind of behaviour? We're very judgy about other people. Yeah.
I also think it's really tricky, like if that happens and someone like completely changes gender, for example, like turns into a man or a woman in a marriage in a church, I think it's important for them to talk to everyone and explain what's going on because, like you say, it is a shock. I think it's a shock to a lot of people when that happens and you can be really judgy.
Well, the problem is probably whether or not we feel safe enough to be that open with people just in general. I mean, it's kind of sad that in that kind of, I'm sure a lot of people do look at churches and think, oh gosh, surely you should be able to be like that. But human beings are human beings wherever they are and, churches versus anywhere. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Pat, thank you so much. That's really, really interesting. Who's This Guy in My Bed has been an amazing and expose of all kinds of ideas. We've really thrown the blankets off that one. But thank you again, and we'll talk to you soon.
You're welcome.
Gorgi, we hope you enjoyed this episode, but we'd love to get to know you better and share more about our lives, what we get up to, what you get up to, and some insider goss and cheeky sneak peeks.
So why not join our Facebook group? It's called She Wasn't Born Yesterday for lots of little extras. Your chance to comment, make suggestions, tell us if there's a topic you'd like us to talk about.
Or just to say g'day. Either way, join us next week on She Wasn't Born Yesterday. We look forward to your company.